Welcome to the BC Adventure Smart Snow Safety and Education Backcountry and Avalanche Awareness webinar. We're here to help you get informed before you go outdoors. I'm grateful to be joining you from the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people. We have a wealth of information to share with you today, and it's all about how you can be safe on the snow and help reduce the number and severity of search and rescue calls. In British Columbia, we have 79 search and rescue groups consisting of 3,000 volunteers. 2,500 of them are full-time members, and 500 of them are members in training. Each year, they respond to 1,900 search and rescue incidents just in British Columbia. It's a busy time in BC. It's a busy time for the first responders, for the unpaid professionals, and also for us at the BC Adventure Smart team, providing outdoor education for our very active province here on the west coast of Canada. As we get into this presentation, you'll learn a lot about what to do before you head outdoors, what to do in an emergency, and how you can keep everyone safe in your group. Let's jump right in. The Adventure Smart program is a national program, and the main focus behind it is to help reduce the number and severity of search and rescue calls right across the country. The program, based on our provincial success, went national in 2009. There is representation in every province and territory, from coast to coast to coast. No matter if you hear the message from us and our passionate BC Adventure Smart team, or from a volunteer in northern BC who delivers our presentations at schools, you'll hear the same message. And that will always be our 3 T's. Trip planning, training, and taking the essentials are the key primary message behind the Adventure Smart program. And we have a number of programs. This is just one of 5, but that message is very consistent throughout all of them. For the Snow Safety Education program, we want to talk about inbounds versus out of bounds. Leaving the controlled boundary area is something that needs to be seriously considered, and how it's accessed is critical. It's a big decision. Spending any time outside of a controlled recreation area or within the ski area boundary, there are hazards that you need to mitigate. We have to really think of the current avalanche forecasts, know how to travel through avalanche terrain, know how to undertake companion rescue. These are 3 key points to start off. And before heading out, we need to know that we've left a trip plan, a comprehensive trip plan, that all the necessary training is everyone has in their group, yourself and everyone in your party, and everyone's packed those essentials with you. We're never following any tracks outside the ski area boundary. For those of us who spend time on the snow, we can either see fencing, boundary ropes, boundary signs like this one here that identifies that ski area boundary. And we're understanding that we're staying within the ski area boundary to ski or snowboard, and that area is managed by ski patrol. And any area beyond that is unmanaged space. It will get you into trouble in those areas. There's dangers beyond these areas, and that's why they're marked for your safety. Trip planning is our first T, and there's a few things involved in it, and it's essential to do every time you head outdoors, for all adventures actually, not just adventures on the snow. We've broken it down into 5 little steps here: understanding and knowing the avalanche forecast, planning your travel route and navigation, knowing the terrain and the conditions for the time of year that you're going, the season, any storm systems that are coming through, checking that weather, and leaving a comprehensive trip plan with a trusted emergency contact. We'll share more information about that shortly. Avalanche forecast and hazards. If you're heading into the backcountry through an appropriate access point, that could be a defined gateway, an area that's identified and clearly signed that you can access at that point. It's definitely not ducking a rope or going out of bounds. It's through an access area that's acceptable. No matter if you're hiking, snowshoeing, snowmobiling, you need to be aware of these avalanche hazards. And reading the daily avalanche forecast from our great friends at Avalanche Canada is your first step to your trip planning. So we're making a plan, and then we're leaving that with a trusted emergency contact, and understanding the ratings here that we've got, the forecast, and it lists the danger ratings, and understanding what considerable, moderate, and low, as just 3 examples. We have to understand what those are. That goes back to the training that we've taken through an avalanche skills training course that are offered through many providers that Avalanche Canada has created the curriculum for. Planning your travel route and navigation. Three main reasons for search and rescue calls in the province of BC are injury, getting lost and disoriented, and exceeding your abilities. So if you can mitigate those risks, and here's one of them, if you understand how to route find and navigate, you're ahead of the game. You can use guidebooks and apps and friends and all these resources and look online to understand what's involved in your adventure and paying close attention to that difficulty of the terrain, then relating it back to your experience and ability. Knowing your limits is key, and planning your trip within your limits and within the limits of your group. And make sure that estimated time for your trip to be taken care of out and back is considered. Your destination is always home. And making sure you're physically fit and mentally prepared for these adventures, and that you can fit all of this fun and adventure in the window before the sun sets, ideally. Knowing the terrain and conditions and paying close attention, we've got a little comparison here to help you give you an example of how much detail we'd love you to look into before you head out there and apply this to your hike or snowshoe or backcountry tour. In the top left, you've got Dog Mountain Trail. We've used this from All Trails, and we've looked up some to give you a basic idea of what to look for yourself. That's in Mount Seymour Provincial Park. It gives you the length, which is only about 5.5 K. About an hour and 15 minutes. The top picture gives you a view of what that terrain looks like. The slope angle, it's often cloudy and low overcast on Mount Seymour, and that gives you a good gist of what that trail could look like. And then the top right has the topographical map of Dog Mountain, giving you the distance again, and really important is the elevation gain. If we come down to the bottom left, we've got Sigurd Peak. It's 14 kilometers long, and it's estimated at just under 8 hours. And in this picture, the terrain is completely different. Your subalpine, possibly tree line right here. The terrain is a completely different scene than Dog Mountain. And we've come over here and we're applying that avalanche forecast, excuse me, for alpine, tree line, and below tree line. Checking that weather is critical, and we'll come back to that previous slide shortly. Checking the forecast before every outing is essential, and making sure you're applying all these pieces to it: temperatures, likelihood of precipitation, wind speed, precipitation amounts, and sunset time. Remember this general rule too, though. On a clear day, the temperature decreases 10 degrees for about every 1,000 meters that you gain in elevation. These are key points to look at almost with a microscope before you head out there for your time on the snow. Now, applying those pieces to, let's say, Sigurd Peak, knowing that we've got that elevation gain, knowing that here it shows us on the topographical map and in print, there's almost 2,000 meters in elevation gain here. So that temperature gradient will be quite a bit based on where you've started at roughly sea level. Gaining almost 2,000 meters, your temperature is going to change possibly by 20 degrees, again, on a clear day when everything's optimal. This is the detail and everything that you need to take into consideration, because this applies to your group dynamics, your clothing, your abilities, your everything will tie in. As we move forward in the presentation, you'll see how. A trusted emergency contact for our trip plan is critical. Finding the right person to be your trusted emergency contact takes consideration, and making sure we're picking someone who understands who you are, where you recreate, your abilities, and how to communicate with you, and the responsibility now that they have to get in touch with police or our CMP in case you're not back on time. You can leave all of this information with them: the why, when, where, what, who, and how. And then if something happens unexpectedly, this information can be shared from your contact to police, and then it goes to search and rescue. Leaving this plan is important. It can be done in many ways. You can send a text, you can take a trailhead selfie, you can use our app, which is a great way to make a plan and leave a plan. The Adventure Smart Trip Plan is very easy and free, actually. You can leave a note in the car, you can leave a note on the kitchen table, on the fridge, but it's important you leave as much information as you can. So here's one we've got. We're sending a text and we're letting our mom know that we're heading out for a hike in the mountains tomorrow. Now we're including the when information. When are we going? We say we're leaving here at 7 a.m. We'll do the Garibaldi Lake Trail, and we should be finished at 4 p.m. at the latest. And now the where. We're going to leave the Royal Creek Car Park and we'll walk up to the Garibaldi Lake campsite and return on the same trail. So there's some pretty good information in there with the return route. The next section here is the what. We want colors of clothing and as much information about what you're taking as possible. I'll be wearing my favorite green top, and I have with me my red jacket, and I've also packed all my essentials. So when I say that I've packed all my essentials, my emergency contact knows what that means. But a great little extra piece in the app for the Adventure Smart Trip Plan app, you can actually click off and check off all the essentials that you're taking. It's super helpful. And then leave the names and the contact information and details of everybody that's going on the trip. I'm going with John and Chrissy. John's number is, and Chrissy's number is. So here's some backup information for your emergency contact. And now the how. We need to state how you're getting to and from. Are you taking the bus? Are you riding your bike and walking it up? Are you driving and leaving your car in a car park? So here it says, I'll call you when we get back to the car. If you don't hear from us by 5 p.m., please try calling me. If I don't answer, please try John or Chrissy, which we've left those numbers as well. And if you can't get through to either of them and you don't hear from us by 6 p.m., please call 911. That's a critical piece. So you've the emergency contacts tried to contact the subjects, the hikers, or however you're playing on the snow, and they don't answer, then you need to contact 911. It has to go through your local police or RCMP, who then can task out the local search and rescue group. There is no number for search and rescue. The second T here is training. Some people think this might be onerous, it's difficult, it's challenging, but no matter how you think about it, let's think about it in a positive light and that it's continuous. It should always be done. We can upgrade, we can have fun with it, and we need to make sure that we keep our skills and abilities up to snuff for the activities that we're choosing to do. We've broken it down into 5 little sections here. Activity-specific skills training. So for winter, you've started already. You've started with us here at BC Adventure Smart, and you're taking the snow safety education program. Another example would be an avalanche skills training course through one of the providers through Avalanche Canada. Physical fitness and training. Being physically fit and mentally prepared for these activities on the snow is key. They take different energy. Winter taxes us a little bit more than other seasons based on temperature and cold. We need to be prepared physically to do our sports and mentally for those situations that might be challenging, and that could be in an emergency. Navigation and route finding. As one of the top 3 reasons for search and rescue in BC, we know that getting lost and disoriented is a big one for search and rescue. Ensure you know how to use the devices you have on however you navigate, if it's map and compass, if it's through maps on your phone, if it's downloaded maps, devices that you may have brought with you, and making sure that you're able to navigate and route find. And you've done a little bit of this before as you planned your trip before you even left. Wilderness first aid training. Having the abilities and the gear with you to apply first aid can help someone in an emergency, and that's a big piece to have in your group. It's helpful if you all have it, actually. And then rescue and emergency training. You've started here today with us. That's a big plus. There's companion rescue courses that you can take through Avalanche Canada and other providers as well. So training is a great piece that you can divide, and there's more to it than this. You can build on your skills through mentorship and certification. Avalanche Canada has a great training program, and it really is essential to head out there with this type of training. No matter if you're ski touring, hiking, snowshoeing, putting on those micro spikes, or going snowmobiling, the influx of outdoor recreation in British Columbia has really increased over the years, and it's our responsibility to understand avalanche formation and how it releases, how to identify avalanche terrain, the basics of trip planning, optimal use of the tools and the resources that are available to you to help you mitigate your risk, and how to use those appropriate travel techniques in the terrain. And that comes down to decision making and managing that risk in the field. And an intro to companion rescue is really a great one. AvCan offers that as well, and through webinars as well, they've got some awesome resources there. And avysavvy.ca is an awesome option for you to check out as well, and it can really open your eyes on snow safety. Taking the essentials as we jump into the third T is a helpful piece to always have your gear packed away, ready to go, no matter what activity you choose to do and no matter the season. So we've got our basic essentials, and then we'll add to it season and sports specific. We'll show you a few examples, and you might have some more that you add to yours as well. And we'll talk about those as we move forward. The basics are easy to pack. We've got a stuff sack here, a few essentials that are checked off, from a headlamp and flashlight with extra batteries, don't forget those, fire making kit, lint from your dryer is an excellent fire starter. Pack it in a Ziploc bag and you're good to go, with some waterproof matches as one example. A signaling device, a safety whistle, an emergency signaling device, some way to signal to search and rescue, first aid kit and pocket knife, sun protection, and emergency shelter or blanket. Those are all displayed there, and we can show you in the next slide. We've put them all in that red sack and made it quite small. Then the rest of the items are easily either packed or worn: extra food and water, clothing and waterproof pieces, navigation and communication devices. It's easy to pack these essentials. You probably have most of them at home. They're easily accessible. And then you've got your great basic foundation of your pack. Adding season and sport specific pieces will always happen, no matter the season. So here's one example for backcountry skiing. In the top left, we've got our essentials. All of them are listed there. And then your extra pieces that you would definitely take: your Avalanche transceiver, shovel and probe, and then whatever else you might need: goggles, hats, skis, poles, of course, extra gloves, some snacks. These are just some of the extra pieces, and you might have other pieces you would take with you that might be personal essentials as well: medication, eyeglasses, that sort of thing. Taking those essentials with you, and these three extra pieces for winter are essential. This for us is essential in the winter. For all of you, if you travel on the snow, that transceiver, shovel and probe, knowing how to use it, understanding they're critical pieces to your travel in the backcountry during the winter time. What to do in an emergency. So we've got our 3 T's under our belt. We can massage those and work on those at all times. And again, accidents happen. As we said, here in British Columbia, just under 2,000 search and rescue calls happen a year. If you are in an emergency, search and rescue need you to stop. Stop moving. Then you can think, observe, and plan. We've broken this down into some stages here that'll help you manage your emergency. Taking that moment when you've stopped to see who's hurt, why have we stopped, what's the emergency, is there care required, is there immediate first aid care, are we lost, are we a little bit disoriented, and let's just stop and think about what we need to do versus continuing to move. We do not want to keep moving. We need to stay in one position there. Now we get to think, how will we contact search and rescue? Well, we know how we can. We've brought communication devices, maybe an InReach, a Spotter, a Zoleo. You probably have your cell phone. We're not relying on that cell phone. Reception can affect travel in the mountains for sure, so could cold temperatures. So another communication device is key. You've also left your trip plan with your emergency contact. So that's how you're communicating with search and rescue and how you can contact them as well. Will anyone know you're missing? You've left that detailed trip plan with your contact, so someone will know if you're not back by the time you indicated. Will anyone know where you are? Again, it's all on your trip plan. So you've left that back at home base there. When should you call search and rescue? You want to call search and rescue as soon as possible. It takes time for them to receive that task from search and rescue, from police, and they have to gather, be paged out, gather, muster, get to the base of where they need to come look for you. So that takes time. So you need to phone right away. Are you prepared to treat a medical emergency? That piece goes back to your training: communications, companion rescue, first aid. You're set there if you've got your training. And do you have the essentials to stay warm and dry? That goes back to taking our essentials, and you've packed those in your bag. You've got the extra layers, a puffy, a hat, a jacket, maybe extra socks. And there's your chance to stay warm and dry, possibly with some food as well. That'll keep your engine moving. And remember, the number to call for help is 911. Search and rescue, there is no charge for search and rescue. And the only number you need to remember is 911. Communications is a big one. How do we communicate with search and rescue? How do we communicate with our family or our emergency contact to let them know we're okay? Don't rely on your cell phone for that means of communication, for those reasons mentioned earlier. You're leaving all your information with your trusted contact, so your trip plan is in place, and you're carrying another piece of communication. Zoleo, InReach, satellite phone, Spot, those are just a few. And in this example of the map, we can see in Alberta where there's a lot of mauve color, and then we come back to British Columbia where the mauve color are just in a few corridor areas. In Alberta, where the mauve is really good reception. And we bring that back into BC. We can see we have limited reception in those corridors where it's quite a bit smaller. Just to make us think about how do we communicate in our very mountainous terrain in BC, where we can lose reception, and we have to be prepared to communicate otherwise. The observation piece of the stop analogy is to see if there's any immediate dangers and hazards where you are, and look around, make sure you're not below a cornice, near a tree well, placing yourself or your group over a running creek. Maybe there's some sinkholes below you. Are you in a safe area? That's key to look around for. And look around to see if you're able to make a shelter where you are. Maybe there's some trees and some flora and fauna. You can make yourself a little nest on the ground and create a shelter with what you've brought with you in your emergency pack. And then look for a clearing only if you can see one where you've stopped. Search and rescue, it's easier for them to see you if there's an opening in the trees. But otherwise, if there's not one close by, don't go searching for one and just stay right where you are. Now you get to plan. You get to use your essentials in your pack, figure out how you're going to respond to this emergency, build your shelter. You might be building a lean-to, looking for branches, using your shelter, your emergency shelter, your blanket in your pack, maybe a snow cave, building one safely, and building a fire if you're capable and have the supplies. And now you're adding those extra layers, if you haven't already, to keep warm and dry. There's a really interesting stat here at the bottom of this slide. The average SAR response in British Columbia is about 8 hours. So most calls in British Columbia come in right around sunset. That's when people usually are tired, accidents happen, and they make that 911 call, and then the sun starts to go down, the temperatures start to drop, and there are other factors in place that often, on an average, can make a search and rescue call 8 hours. So you have to be prepared to wait 8 hours, possibly in the dark, in the cold, in the snow, waiting for search and rescue to find you. Keeping warm and dry is critical. We're comfortable, we can think clearly when we're warm and dry, and that comes from clothing and keeping that moisture away from us. So we're never wearing cotton, We're always wearing a synthetic system on us, and that system is a layer of 3. We've got our base layer, which is synthetic or a polypropylene close to you, so it can wick away the moisture. The mid layer is thermal, a puffy wool, a synthetic again, maybe a fleece jacket, and the outer protects us, again, a synthetic layer. Gore-Tex is a great example of how it protects you from wind and snow and rain and sleet. Fire, here's a great example of creating a fire in the snow conditions. Keeping it a safe distance away from your shelter, having it controlled and managed. That goes right back to training, if someone has taught you or if you know how to build a fire safely. The shelter allows you to reflect that heat. Here's a good one with the shelter up against the lean-to, gives you a backdrop. It gives you space to have your wood built up there. You can keep warm and dry, and it gives you a barrier actually. And it allows you to have a space there while you wait in the day or the night if it's safe to do so. What to do in an emergency if you find yourself lost, and what does it look like to search and rescue? Their view is completely different than yours. Theirs is either from the ground, it can be from all-terrain vehicles, and it can be from an aircraft or a helicopter. So you have to think, how can you make yourself as big as possible? What is that contrast? What color of clothing are you buying when you go to the stores or backpacks? You want to be as bright as possible, actually. Leaving those clues like this one here in the snow with the SOS. This was easily spotted from search and rescue, also with the subject arms in the air. Be seen and be heard. So your emergency safety whistle is always on the ski tab or on the zipper tab of your coat, and it allows you to blow that if need be. So place yourself in the eyes of a search and rescue volunteer, and how would you like to be found? As we conclude and come to the end of our presentation here for snow safety, it's really important to remember these 3 T's, and this is where we can sum up the presentation. And remember that trip planning is an important piece with your group and those group dynamics, and having that conversation around the table over dinner and gathering and looking at maps and routes to figure out how are we going to make this plan and have a great time together and get home safe and sound. And leaving that with a trusted contact on the Adventure Smart app possibly, or at least leaving a trip plan with someone, having the training to do the activity that you choose to do, either certification based, you've been mentored, you trained yourself, you know how to go out there and enjoy your sport safely, and taking those essentials with you. Each one in your party needs to take those essentials with you. So the 3 T's are key. We love to stay in touch here at BC Adventure Smart, and that's easy to do through our social media. It's all at the same handle. You can download our free app right now. You can take your phone and put it to your phone, take it to camera mode and put it right over the QR, and that will easily take you to the QR code, and you can download that, no problem. And in conclusion, I'd just like to thank you for joining us here at BC Adventure Smart for our snow safety education, and wishing you a safe winter. And thanks for getting informed before you go outdoors. It helps our search and rescue volunteers in the province as well. Have a safe winter, everybody. Thank you.